Hey guys, it's Ken. So as you know, in June, 30% of Americans miss their housing payments. Okay, so I know a lot of you guys that are landlords and your tenants, you're probably freaking out right now, which I don't blame. There are 3 strategies for landlords when tenants don't pay your rent, and I'm going to go through those right now. So as you guys know, we have about 8,000 tenants and we have our own management company. So we have a big staff, and of course, I've been in property management for almost 30 years, and so I've seen these downturns before, and these are proven methods I think that hopefully you guys will utilize. And so when you're looking at your tenants, we put them into 3 different categories. So the first category of tenant was the ones that could pay, okay? So we had roughly about 80% of our 8,000 tenants fell into that category. So that was pretty good. We felt pretty good in April, May, and June with those folks. The second category, which was about 15%, which were the tenants that could not pay but came in to sit down with us and talk to us. So I'm going to focus on those now. And so what we did is we worked with the National Apartment Association, and we got a promise to pay agreement, or a PTP agreement, which if you just click at the bottom of this video, I'll give you guys today for free. Just click on there, you can download the form, and it's a very clear agreement that'll help you sit down with your tenant. You don't have to come up with your own agreement. It's already vetted out through lots of different lawyers. So this is the agreement that we use as a company, and about 15% of our tenants all sat down with us. And the thing about that, these tenants have been super responsible and working with the managers and the landlords on sitting down and saying, hey, we have a problem right now. We can't pay. We don't have any income. You know, can you work with us? This is the best scenario that you can ask for. And this is exactly what we had to do in 2008 when we had all those job losses and people started losing their homes and their jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the key is just to sit down and communicate with your residents and your tenants to figure out what they can do and work with them. So the third category are those tenants that are living in your communities or your rentals, and they aren't communicating in any way possible. And those are the ones we're going to kind of talk about now. So the first strategy is to obviously sit down with all those tenants that are working with you and come up with a cohesive agreement through this PTP, or promise to pay agreement, that you can download for free from the website. There are 3 things in that PTP that you need to make sure of. The first one is that the tenant needs to be able to prove hardship. The second one is that you need to work on a payment plan that works for the both of you. And then the third one is they need to sign it. So this is an actual agreement outside of the lease agreement. So that is one strategy that you can do. The next strategy is going to be directed toward those tenants where there's no communication at all. And this is how we had to get very, very creative as we were trying to figure out whether those particular units that we owned were occupied or they were vacant, because we didn't know because there was no communication. The first thing that you can do for the people that aren't communicating to you is, 1, pull out their lease and pull out their application. I think that's really, really important. And hopefully you have a rental application that has full of information on there about where they were working, maybe where their spouse was working, or their significant other, or their roommate, what kind of car they have, next of kin, relatives. All those things should be in that application. And what you can do is you can start to call those places and try to get a hold of them, and basically use the information that they've already given you in those applications. And hopefully you guys got their cell phone numbers, their landlines, and even their work numbers on those applications. And if you didn't, that was a massive mistake, because this is the time that you need to be calling them, just like a collection company would be calling if anybody owed a debt, because these tenants do owe rent still. We are just in a period of time where we can't go through the eviction process, but they still owe it. And so you want to use the information in that application to try to really get a hold of those folks before you go to the second tactic, which is physically going to the door And that's when you're going to be knocking on the door in the morning, at the night, even late at the night, and very, very early in the morning. You're going to be kind of watching to see if their car is there or not. You basically want to see if they're occupying the apartment, because if they're not in contact with you and they haven't paid rent, then that is a real concern. You might have a vacant unit that you don't even know is vacant, for an example. The third thing you can do is check your landlord-tenant laws in your state or municipalities, because they do have the ability to be able to go inside of a unit when you give notice. Now, most of our units are in Texas, Oklahoma, Nevada, and Arizona, and it's a 48-hour notice that's required in order for you to be able to go access a unit. So this could be for any non-emergency reasons. So I'm going through this right now. I got 2 condos in Las Vegas. They're both in escrow. We got a property manager, and we got renters in both of them. And so we gave notice to the renters that we were going to go check out the units because the new buyers wanted to go inside. And so you have landlord-tenant laws in your state and in your municipalities that you just need to check and follow the laws, but you can actually do this. You can actually give notice and go access these units. And so that is the next thing that we did, because we wanted to find out if those units were vacant or occupied, okay? So if they were vacant, then we knew that we were going to take back that unit that was technically called abandoned or skipped, and we took back that unit. We were able to figure out all the damages and get that unit back online and re-rent that unit, and now we were able to put that back into inventory. If it's occupied, then you basically now know that you have somebody that's not communicating to you. They don't believe that they need to pay rent. You do have an agreement that says they do have to pay rent, but now you're tied, your hands are tied, you cannot evict them, you cannot move forward on the eviction process. And what you need to do is really start moving down the line of contacting them, just like a collection company would contact you, as they do for a non-payment of anything else, and just keep in communication with them over and over and over and over as much as you can. So the last one is just pure communication. Now, I know at this point you guys are probably frustrated. A lot of these folks aren't returning your calls. They're certainly not getting a hold of you anytime soon. You know you have an occupied unit. I'm sure you're very, very, very frustrated. But I want you as a landlord to go out and try to take a look at some of these rental assistance programs that are out there. The city does not want homelessness. They do not want to put people out on the street. Let's be frank here, guys. These are good people that had good jobs and were fine before all of this, and they're probably just full of stress and anxiety and fear. And the last thing that you guys are really wanting to do here is kick people out. We need to have a little empathy around this. But I also understand, and now we're going to go into the third strategy. As a landlord, you know, you've got some issues on your mortgage potentially. And so the third strategy is around forbearance. So hopefully you guys know at this point that there's these forbearance programs available through the CARES Act. And the CARES Act actually allows, without having to prove hardship, that you can defer your mortgage up to 180 days. And at the end of that 180 days, you can apply again to do it for another 180 days. So as a landlord, you can actually approach your government-sponsored mortgage programs, so that's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, etc., and apply for these forbearance programs. That's definitely going to help as a landlord, and certainly around your credit. If the tenants aren't paying you rent and you don't have that money to be able to pay the mortgage, then you hopefully can get relief through these forbearance programs. I know if you have a private mortgage, it might be a little bit different, but you do need to communicate with the lender or whoever gave you that loan and communicate to them about what's happening with your tenants, especially if they're not paying. So those are 3 strategies for landlords when tenants can't pay their rent. But I'm going to also talk to you about some lessons and why, as a company with 8,000 tenants, we were able to collect 98, 99, and 100% of our rent from 8,000 tenants. And there are 3 things that we did as a management company to make sure that our collections were high through this crisis. The first one, and the most important one, is your screening process. What's starting to show up now for a lot of you is maybe you didn't put the right tenant in there. So most tenants do not want to mess up their credit. Most tenants do not want to walk away from a debt that they owe. even though there's an eviction policy out there right now that says a landlord cannot evict. So who you have in that particular rental is very, very important at this point. Now, hindsight's 20/20, but moving forward, I can't emphasize enough for you to make sure you have to run a proper application and a screening process for credit, criminal, and sex offender checks on every single one of your tenants. That is a very simple way to lower the risk and make sure that you get paid. The second one is in the application itself. Sometimes people will just put their name, their social, and some highlighted information, and you'll run a credit, for example, or maybe you don't. So the application becomes very, very important. The more detailed the application that you have, the more certainty you're going to have to be able to reach in and try to collect that debt. The more information you have from your tenant, the better off you're going to be in collecting that rent. And the third thing, this is just basic relationships. In our company, we have what's called a touch program. We like to communicate to our residents every single month somehow. That might be through an email, that might be through a text, that might be through a phone call, that might be a maintenance guy going up and knocking on the door and seeing if they have anything that they need. That might be something that we do for them and we give them a gift. It doesn't really matter, but we're always trying to stay in communication with our tenants through the year. What happens a lot of times is the landlords will sign up a tenant and they'll expect a check, and the only time that they ever contact them is if there's something late or there's something wrong, and then they're in communication with them. And what we try to do is build a relationship with them for two reasons. One, for in times like this, we already have a bridge and we already have a relationship and we're already in communication with them. But two, at the end of their lease term, they're now coming to us because they like where they live. They see that we're responsive. They see that we're communicating. And also, if the tenant's not happy, they're letting us know. So a lot of times tenants are unhappy and they just decide not to renew their lease. So those are three good strategies that you guys can employ moving forward so that hopefully, if this ever happens to you again, you're now in a better situation and your rent collections are a lot higher. So again, thanks again for watching.